The gunshot that echoed across the Montana plains in the summer of 1876 changed Samuel Morrison's life forever. He hit the ground hard, dust clouding around him as pain seared through his lower back. At 28, Samuel had never imagined dying this way, ambushed by rustlers while tending his small herd of cattle outside Lincoln, Montana. But as darkness crept into the edges of his vision, he accepted that this might be the end. "Don't you dare die on me, cowboy," a woman's voice commanded, cutting through his fading consciousness. Small but strong hands pressed against his wound. "I didn't ride all this way to find a dead man." Samuel forced his eyes open, blinking against the setting sun. A woman with copper hair pulled back in a practical braid knelt beside him, her green eyes fierce with determination as she worked to stop his bleeding. "Who?" he managed before pain silenced him. "Dr. Emma Whittaker," she replied, not looking up from her work. "Now hush and let me save your life." Those were the last words Samuel heard before the world went black. When he woke again, he was in an unfamiliar bed, sunlight streaming through curtains he didn't recognize. For a moment, panic seized him until the memory of the ambush returned. He tried to sit up, but a stabbing pain in his back forced him down with a groan. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," said the same voice from before. The woman, Dr. Whittaker, approached his bedside with a cup of water. She was younger than he'd expected, perhaps 25, with a smattering of freckles across her nose and cheeks that softened her otherwise serious expression. "You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Morrison. How do you know my name?" Samuel asked, his voice rough with thirst. "Your neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, identified you when he helped me bring you to town. You're in my clinic now." She handed him the water. "Drink slowly." As Samuel sipped, he studied her. Female doctors were rare, especially in frontier towns like Lincoln. What brings a lady doctor to these parts? A shadow passed over her face. The same thing that brings most people to the frontier, a fresh start. Her tone made it clear the subject was closed. "Now, about your injury. The bullet damaged your spine before exiting. I've done what I can, but—" Samuel recognized the professional distance in her voice. He'd heard that tone before from the doctor in Chicago who'd told his mother she had 6 months to live. "Just tell me straight, Doc." Emma met his gaze directly. "You may never walk again. And there's damage that will likely prevent you from ever fathering children. I'm sorry." The words hit Samuel like a second bullet. No walking, no children. In that moment, everything he'd planned for his future, the ranch he was building, the family he'd hoped to have someday, crumbled away. "I understand if you need time to process this," Emma said softly, "but Mr. Morrison, Samuel, people have rebuilt their lives after worse." Samuel turned his face to the wall. "Leave me be, Doc." Emma sighed but respected his request. As her footsteps retreated, Samuel closed his eyes, letting the bitter reality wash over him. He'd come west 5 years ago after his mother's death, determined to build something of his own. Now, at 28, he was as helpless as a newborn calf. For 2 weeks, Samuel remained at Emma's clinic, mostly silent except for necessary communication. Emma checked his wound, helped him sit up for meals, and spoke to him of the weather, the town gossip, anything to fill the heavy silence. Samuel responded with grunts or one-word answers, his eyes fixed on the window where he could see the mountains in the distance. It was Emma's assistant, a local woman named Martha, who finally broke through his shell. "Dr. Whittaker's brother was like you," Martha said one afternoon while changing his bandages. "Injured in the war, couldn't walk neither." Samuel's attention sharpened. "What happened to him?" "Died of pneumonia 2 winters ago. That's why she came out here." After losing her brother and her fiancé in the same year, the city held too many memories. Her fiancé? Samuel found himself asking, then immediately wondered why he cared. Some fancy doctor who couldn't handle the scandal of her medical practice. Broke their engagement when she refused to give up her career. Martha tied off the bandage with practiced hands. "That woman's got grit, Mr. Morrison, more than most men I know." That evening, when Emma brought his dinner, Samuel finally spoke more than 2 words together. "Thank you," he said. "For saving my life." Emma looked surprised, then smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "You're welcome, though I must say you've been a terrible patient. I've been told I'm stubborn." Stubborn is putting it mildly, she replied, but there was a warmth in her voice that hadn't been there before. How's the pain today? Present, Samuel admitted, but bearable, Emma nodded, setting down the tray. Samuel, I've been thinking. Your injuries are severe, but with the right exercises and determination, you might regain some mobility. Hope flickered inside him. You mean I could walk again? I can't promise that, she said carefully, but I've seen surprising recoveries before. My brother. She hesitated, then continued. He was injured in the war. The doctors in Philadelphia said he'd never leave his bed, but within a year he could move around with crutches. Samuel studied her face. Martha told me about your brother. I'm sorry for your loss. Emma's expression tightened. Martha talks too much, but yes, James taught me that medical predictions aren't always destiny. She pulled up a chair beside the bed. If you're willing to work, and I mean work harder than you ever have, we can try. For the first time since the shooting, Samuel felt a spark of determination. When do we start, Doc? Tomorrow morning, she said firmly. And call me Emma. The next day began what would become the most grueling months of Samuel's life. Emma was a demanding taskmaster, pushing him through exercises that left him sweating and cursing. She ignored his complaints, his anger, his moments of despair, responding only with calm insistence that he do one more repetition, one more attempt to move his legs. I can't feel anything below my waist, Samuel shouted one particularly frustrating morning, 6 weeks into their regimen. What's the point of all this torture if I'm never going to walk again? Emma stood at the foot of the bed, unmoved by his outburst. You felt something yesterday. You told me yourself a tingling in your right foot. Maybe I imagined it, he muttered. Maybe, she conceded. Or maybe your body is healing slowly but surely. Either way, giving up ensures failure. She crossed her arms. Is that what you want, to spend the rest of your life as a bitter man who gave up at the first major setback? Her words stung because they contained truth. Samuel had been wallowing in self-pity, focusing on what he'd lost rather than what might still be possible. No, he finally said, that's not what I want. Good, Emma's expression softened slightly. Now let's try again. By early autumn, Samuel had regained sensation in both legs and could move his right foot at the ankle. Each small victory was celebrated, each setback weathered together. Somewhere along the way, their relationship shifted. Emma was still his doctor, but she was also becoming his friend, perhaps his only friend in Lincoln. When Emma deemed him stable enough to leave the clinic, Samuel faced another challenge. His small ranch house was a mile outside town, and he had no way to care for himself there. You could stay with the Jenkinses, Emma suggested. They've offered to take you in until you're more independent, Samuel grimaced. Thomas Jenkins is a good man, but his wife would mother me to death, and their house is too crowded already with those 5 children. Emma hesitated. There's another option. I have a spare room behind the clinic. It's small, but you'd have privacy and I could continue your treatments easily. I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition, she interrupted. It's a medical decision. You need continued care, and as your doctor, I'm recommending an arrangement that serves that purpose. Samuel recognized her professional tone, the one she used when she didn't want to be argued with. If you're sure. I am. Emma stood and smoothed her skirt. I'll have the room prepared by tomorrow. The small room behind Emma's clinic became Samuel's home. During the day, he worked on his exercises while Emma saw patients. In the evenings, they often shared meals, talking about their lives before Lincoln. Samuel learned that Emma had fought her way through medical school, one of only a few women in her class. Emma discovered that Samuel had been a bookkeeper in Chicago before heading west, and that he still kept meticulous ledgers for his small ranch. Mr. Jenkins has been looking after your cattle, Emma mentioned one evening in late October. He says they're doing well, though he had to sell 2 to pay for feed. Samuel nodded, grateful but troubled. I need to find a way to earn my keep. I can't live off your charity forever, Emma. It's hardly charity, she objected. Call it what you will, I need purpose. Samuel ran a hand through his hair, which had grown longer during his convalescence. I was a fair hand with numbers before I decided to play cowboy. Perhaps someone in town needs bookkeeping services. Emma considered this. The general store owner, Mr. Parker, was complaining just last week about his accounts being in disarray. I could speak with him. That was how Samuel began his new career as Lincoln's accountant. Mr. Parker's books were indeed a mess, but Samuel found satisfaction in bringing order to the chaos. Word spread, and soon other business owners sought his services. He couldn't ride or rope anymore, but he could still contribute. By Christmas, Samuel could stand with support and take a few faltering steps with crutches. Emma had arranged for a chair with wheels that allowed him greater mobility around town. His upper body had strengthened from the constant physical therapy and propelling himself in the wheeled chair, giving him a powerful physique that drew admiring glances from the local women. Not that Samuel noticed. His attention had increasingly fixed on one woman alone, the determined doctor who had saved not just his life, but his spirit. Emma Whittaker had become the center of his world, though he dared not tell her so. She was educated, independent, and surely had no interest in a half-crippled cowboy turned bookkeeper. The holiday season brought a festive atmosphere to Lincoln. The town organized a Christmas dance, and Emma surprised Samuel by insisting they attend. "I haven't been to a dance since I was a girl," she admitted as they made their way to the town hall. "My medical practice didn't leave much time for socializing in Philadelphia." Samuel glanced at her, struck by how different she looked outside her usual practical attire. She wore a deep green dress that brought out the color of her eyes, and her copper hair was arranged in soft curls rather than her usual severe braid. "You look beautiful," he said before he could stop himself. A blush colored her cheeks. "Thank you." "You clean up rather well yourself, Mr. Morrison." The dance was lively, with most of the town in attendance. Samuel positioned his wheeled chair near the punch table, watching as couples twirled across the floor. Several times, men approached Emma for a dance, but to Samuel's surprise, she declined them all, preferring to stay by his side. "You don't have to keep me company," Samuel told her after she turned down the blacksmith for the third time. "I'm perfectly capable of entertaining myself." Emma gave him a level look. "Has it occurred to you that I might prefer your company?" Before Samuel could respond, Martha bustled over with cups of punch for them both. "Dr. Whittaker, Mrs. Reynolds is asking if you might have something for her headache." Emma sighed. "Even at a dance, I'm still on duty." "Excuse me, Samuel, I won't be long." As she walked away, Martha gave Samuel a knowing smile. "That woman hasn't taken a night off in 2 years, yet here she is at a dance, sitting with you instead of tending to her patients immediately." Makes you think, doesn't it? It did make Samuel think thoughts he'd been trying to suppress for months. Could Emma possibly return his growing feelings? He watched her move through the crowd, stopping to speak with various townspeople, her smile warm but professional. When their eyes met across the room, something in her gaze made his heart quicken. When Emma returned, the band had started playing a slower melody. Couples drew closer on the dance floor, swaying to the gentle rhythm. "Would you dance with me, Emma?" Samuel asked suddenly. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Samuel, I don't think—" "Not on the floor," he clarified. "Right here. I can stand if you help me." Uncertainty crossed her face, but she nodded. Samuel gripped the arms of his chair and with Emma's support pushed himself upright. His legs trembled with the effort, but he was determined. Emma stepped closer, one arm around his waist for support, the other hand clasping his. They couldn't move much, just a gentle swaying, but to Samuel, it was a dance more meaningful than any he'd ever experienced. Emma's head rested lightly against his chest, and he could smell the lavender in her hair. For a few precious minutes, his disability faded away, leaving only the woman in his arms and the music surrounding them. "Thank you," he murmured as the song ended, and he carefully lowered himself back into the chair. Emma's eyes were bright when she looked at him. "I should be thanking you. I can't remember the last time I danced." Something had shifted between them that night. In the weeks that followed, Samuel noticed a new softness in Emma's manner, a hesitancy that hadn't been there before. She seemed almost shy at times, which was so unlike her usual confident demeanor that it both confused and thrilled him. Winter settled over Lincoln with a vengeance, bringing biting cold and heavy snow. Emma's medical practice grew busier with seasonal illnesses, while Samuel continued his accounting work from the clinic. Their evenings together became precious interludes in increasingly hectic days. One such evening in late January, they sat before the fire in Emma's small parlor, Samuel reviewing ledgers while Emma read a medical journal. The comfortable silence was broken by Emma's thoughtful voice. "I received a letter today from a colleague in San Francisco. He's offering me a position at a new women's hospital they're establishing." Samuel's heart froze. He kept his eyes on the ledger, though the numbers blurred before him. "Sounds like a good opportunity," he managed to say. "It is," Emma agreed. "Better equipment, more patients, the chance to work with other doctors instead of practicing alone." "When would you leave?" Samuel asked, still not looking up. There was a pause before Emma answered. "I haven't decided if I'm going." Now Samuel did look up, meeting her gaze across the room. "Why wouldn't you? It's everything you've worked for." Emma set aside her journal. "Not everything," she said quietly. The weight of unspoken words hung between them. Samuel closed the ledger and placed it on the side table. "Emma, I would never want to hold you back from your career. You've already sacrificed too much time caring for me." "Is that what you think this has been?" Emma's voice sharpened. "A sacrifice, isn't it? You're a brilliant doctor who spent months helping a stubborn cowboy learn to walk again, when you could have been treating patients who actually appreciate your skills." "You appreciate my skills just fine," Emma countered. "And you've done the hard work of recovery yourself." "I just provided guidance." "You provided hope," Samuel said softly. "When I had none," Emma stood and crossed to the window, looking out at the snow-covered street. "The position in San Francisco is prestigious. Any doctor would be fortunate to receive such an offer." "Then you should accept it." She turned to face him, her expression troubled. "What if I don't want to leave Lincoln? What if I've found reasons to stay?" Samuel's pulse quickened. "What reasons would those be, Doc?" Emma took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "You, Samuel, you're the reason I'm considering staying." The admission hung in the air between them, fragile and monumental. Samuel wheeled his chair closer to where she stood, stopping just before her. "Emma," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I have nothing to offer you. I'm half the man I was before the shooting. You deserve someone whole." "Don't," she said fiercely. "Don't diminish yourself that way. You are not less because of your injury." "I can't give you children," he said, voicing his deepest regret. "The damage, medical predictions aren't always destiny," Emma reminded him, echoing her words from months ago. "But even if that's true, there are many ways to build a family." Samuel reached for her hand, hardly daring to hope. "Are you saying you could see a future with me?" Emma's fingers intertwined with his. "I'm saying I already do." Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a beginning rather than a culmination. When they parted, Samuel saw in Emma's eyes the same wonder he felt. Neither spoke for a long moment, content to exist in the perfect understanding they had reached. "I won't accept the San Francisco position," Emma said finally. "My place is here." "Only if it's truly what you want," Samuel insisted. "I need you to be certain." Emma smiled, touching his cheek. "I've never been more certain of anything." As winter turned to spring, Samuel's strength continued to improve. He could now walk short distances with a cane, though the wheeled chair remained necessary for longer journeys. Emma had moved his few possessions into her home behind the clinic, causing predictable gossip until they announced their engagement in April of 1877. "About time," Martha declared when they told her the news. "I was beginning to think you two were the only ones in town who couldn't see what was right in front of your faces." The wedding was set for June, a simple ceremony in the town's small church. As the date approached, Samuel found himself thinking more about the future, specifically about the family he had once hoped to have. Despite Emma's optimism, he had accepted the likelihood that he would never father children. The acceptance brought peace, if not complete happiness. One afternoon in May, Samuel was alone at the clinic while Emma made house calls. Using his cane, he explored parts of the house he rarely visited, including a small storeroom off the kitchen. There, to his surprise, he found woodworking tools, a saw, hammer, plane, and chisels, neatly organized but covered in dust. "They were James's," Emma explained that evening when he asked about them. "My brother was a carpenter before the war. I couldn't bear to part with his tools after he died." Samuel considered this. Would you mind if I used them? Emma looked surprised. You know carpentry? My father was a furniture maker in Chicago. I worked in his shop until I was 16. Samuel hadn't thought about those days in years. I was quite good with my hands before I turned to numbers. Then the tools are yours to use, Emma said warmly. James would have liked that. The next day, Samuel began planning his project. He sketched designs, calculated measurements, and made a list of the lumber he would need. When Emma asked what he was building, he simply smiled and said, "You'll see." For the next several weeks, Samuel spent his free time in the small shed behind the clinic that he had converted into a workshop. The physical labor was therapeutic, strengthening his upper body while requiring him to practice standing for increasingly longer periods. Each day brought progress both in the project and in his own recovery. The wedding day arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures. Lincoln's residents filled the church to witness the union of their town doctor and the accountant who had overcome so much. Samuel stood at the altar without his cane, a personal triumph he had worked toward for this moment. When Emma walked down the aisle in a simple cream gown, her copper hair adorned with wildflowers, he felt his heart might burst with love. "You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he whispered as she reached his side. "And you're standing," she whispered back, joy illuminating her face. Their vows were traditional, but spoken with profound sincerity. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed his bride to enthusiastic applause from the congregation. The celebration continued at the town hall, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed twice the number of guests. Samuel managed one dance with Emma, moving slowly but steadily in her arms before returning to his chair. Throughout the evening, he watched his wife, the word still new and wondrous in his mind, as she laughed and talked with the townspeople who had become their extended family. "Ready to see your surprise?" Samuel asked as they prepared to leave the reception. Emma's eyes brightened with curiosity. "More than ready." They thanked their guests and made their way home, where Samuel led Emma to the spare bedroom they had been using for storage. "Close your eyes," he instructed before opening the door. Taking her hand, he guided her into the room. "You can look now." Emma opened her eyes, then gasped. In the center of the room stood a beautifully crafted wooden crib, the headboard carved with delicate wildflowers. Beside it was a rocking chair with the same floral motif. "Samuel," Emma breathed, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "This is what you've been working on all these weeks," Samuel nodded, suddenly uncertain. "I know we may never have a child of our own to place in it, but I needed to build this, to show that I believe in possibilities." He swallowed hard. "If you think it's foolish," Emma silenced him with a kiss. When she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received, and Samuel, I believe in possibilities too." They spent their first night as husband and wife in the home they now truly shared, falling asleep in each other's arms with newfound hope for the future. Summer passed into autumn, bringing changes to their lives. Samuel's business expanded, requiring him to rent a small office in town. Emma trained a young woman named Sarah as a nurse to help with her growing practice. They settled into a rhythm of work and home life that suited them both. In October, Emma began experiencing bouts of nausea in the mornings. At first, she dismissed it as a passing illness, but as the symptoms persisted, a different explanation presented itself. "It's not possible," she told herself one morning after being sick again. Yet as a doctor, she recognized the signs. After a week of uncertainty, she examined herself carefully and confirmed what seemed miraculous. She was with child. Emma waited until evening to share the news, uncertain how Samuel would react. They sat together after dinner, discussing their day as usual, when Emma finally found the courage to speak. "Samuel, I need to tell you something." He looked up from his book, noting her serious expression. "What is it? Are you unwell?" "Not unwell, no." Emma took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." Samuel stared at her, uncomprehending. "But the doctors said medical predictions aren't always destiny," Emma reminded him gently. "We've proven that more than once." "A baby," Samuel whispered, the reality slowly dawning. "We're going to have a baby," Emma nodded, watching his face anxiously. "Are you happy?" Samuel moved from his chair to kneel before her, another movement that would have been impossible a year ago, and placed his hand on her still flat stomach. Happy doesn't begin to describe what I'm feeling. His voice broke with emotion. Emma, you've given me back everything I thought I'd lost. The pregnancy progressed normally, much to their relief. Emma continued her medical practice until her condition became too advanced, at which point she reluctantly allowed Sarah to take over more responsibilities. Samuel hovered protectively, insisting on accompanying Emma wherever she went, much to her amused exasperation. "I'm pregnant, not helpless," she reminded him repeatedly. "I know," Samuel would reply, "but let me enjoy taking care of you for a change." As Emma's belly grew, so did Samuel's project list. He added a changing table to match the crib, built shelves for baby items, and crafted a small chest for toys. Working with wood brought him joy and strengthened his body further. By spring of 1878, he could walk comfortably with a cane for most of the day, resorting to the wheeled chair only when fatigue set in. On a warm May morning, Emma went into labor. Samuel sent for Martha and Sarah, who arrived quickly to assist with the birth. Then began the longest day of Samuel's life, pacing the parlor floor as Emma's cries echoed from their bedroom. Each sound tore at his heart, but Martha assured him all was proceeding normally. "Babies take their time coming into this world," she told him. "Your wife is strong, have faith." As evening approached, the cries changed to a pushing effort, and then the most beautiful sound Samuel had ever heard, the wail of a newborn child. "Mr. Morrison," Sarah called from the doorway, her face tired but smiling. "Come meet your son." Samuel entered the bedroom on unsteady legs to find Emma propped against pillows, her hair damp with sweat but her face radiant with exhaustion and joy. In her arms lay a tiny bundle with a shock of dark hair. "Samuel," Emma said softly, "this is William James Morrison, your son." Samuel sank onto the edge of the bed, overwhelmed. The baby was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and a strong set of lungs that he demonstrated as Samuel carefully took him in his arms for the first time. "Hello, William," Samuel whispered, tears flowing freely down his face. "I'm your pa." The baby quieted, as if recognizing the voice he had heard for months through his mother's belly. Samuel looked up to meet Emma's gaze, finding his own wonder reflected there. "Thank you," he said simply. Emma reached for his hand. "We did this together," she reminded him. "All of it." The weeks following William's birth were a blur of midnight feedings, diaper changes, and overwhelming love. Samuel discovered he had a knack for soothing the baby, often walking him around the house in the early morning hours, singing softly while Emma caught precious sleep. By William's first birthday, Samuel had regained almost all his mobility. He walked with only a slight limp and rarely used his cane except on particularly difficult days. His accounting business had grown enough to hire an assistant, giving him more time at home with his family. Emma had gradually returned to her medical practice, with Sarah continuing as her nurse and Martha helping care for William when both parents were working. It was an arrangement that suited their unconventional family perfectly. One evening in the summer of 1879, Samuel sat on the porch of their expanded home he had built in addition the previous autumn, watching Emma play with William in the yard. The boy was walking now, unsteady but determined, his personality already showing the stubborn streak he had inherited from both parents. "Pa," William called, spotting Samuel on the porch. He toddled toward the steps, arms outstretched. Samuel rose to meet him, scooping the boy up as he reached the bottom step. "Look at you, running like a wild Mustang." Emma joined them, her skin flushed from the game of chase. At 30, she was more beautiful than ever to Samuel's eyes, her copper hair now streaked with occasional strands of silver, her green eyes still bright with intelligence and warmth. "He's going to be faster than both of us soon," she observed, leaning against the porch railing. Samuel bounced William in his arms, delighting in the boy's giggles. "Good thing we're still smarter than he is for now at least." Emma's expression turned thoughtful. "Samuel, I've been meaning to tell you something." "Oh." He recognized her tone, the same one she had used when telling him about William. A smile spread across her face. "It seems William is going to be a big brother come winter." Joy surged through Samuel. "Really? You're certain?" Emma nodded. The doctor is quite sure, she teased, referring to herself. Samuel wrapped his free arm around her waist, pulling her close while still holding William. I thought William was our miracle. Now we're getting another. It appears your body had other plans than what those doctors predicted, Emma said, resting her head against his shoulder. Our bodies, Samuel corrected, and our hearts. He kissed the top of her head. I built that crib believing in possibilities, but I never dared hope for this much happiness. As the sun set over the Montana plains, casting long shadows across their yard, Samuel Morrison held his family close. The journey from that dusty day when a bullet had changed his life had been long and often painful, but standing here now whole in all the ways that truly mattered, he wouldn't change a single step. In December of 1879, Emma gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth Martha Morrison. William, now a sturdy toddler of 2.5, regarded his sister with solemn curiosity, allowed to touch her tiny fingers under his parents' watchful eyes. She has your hair, Samuel observed, noting the reddish fuzz on the newborn's head. And your chin, Emma replied. Poor girl. Samuel chuckled, then grew serious. Did you ever imagine this that day you found me shot on the plains? Emma looked from their daughter to their son and finally to her husband. No, she admitted, but I'm grateful every day for whatever fate brought me to that spot at that moment. As am I, Samuel said. As am I. By the spring of 1885, the Morrison family had grown again with the addition of twin boys, Robert and Charles, born in 1883. Their home had expanded once more to accommodate the growing brood, and Samuel's carpentry skills had been put to good use creating beds, desks, and toys for the children. Emma continued her medical practice, though she had cut back her hours to spend more time with the family. Samuel's accounting business was prosperous, allowing them a comfortable life. The injury that had once threatened to define his existence had faded to an occasional reminder, a limp on rainy days, a need to rest after particularly strenuous activity. On the 9th anniversary of the day Emma had found Samuel bleeding on the plains, they stood together on their porch, watching their 4 children play in the yard. William, now 7, was teaching 5-year-old Elizabeth to throw a lasso, while the twin boys, just 2, toddled after them on chubby legs. 9 years, Emma mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Samuel slipped his arm around her waist, and sometimes it feels like another lifetime. Do you ever think about who you might have been if those rustlers hadn't shot you that day? Samuel considered the question. I might have been a more successful rancher, he acknowledged. Might have had more land, more cattle. He pressed a kiss to her temple. But I wouldn't have had you or our children. I wouldn't trade this life for any other. Emma leaned into him. Nor would I. Their quiet moment was interrupted by William's excited shout. Pa, look, I caught Lizzie with my lasso. Samuel laughed as Elizabeth stood indignantly inside the loop of rope. Well done, son, but you'd better let her go before she decides to get even. As the children resumed their play, Samuel reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The doctors in his past had been wrong about many things: his ability to walk, to father children, to build a meaningful life despite his injury. But Emma had been right from the start. Medical predictions weren't always destiny. The crib he had built in those early days of hope now held their youngest sons, just as it had held William and Elizabeth before them. It stood as a testament to faith in possibilities, in recovery, in love's ability to heal wounds both physical and spiritual. Samuel Morrison had once believed his life was over when a bullet tore through his back. Instead, it had been just beginning. With Emma by his side, he had discovered strength he never knew he possessed, built a family he'd been told was impossible, and found happiness beyond anything he could have imagined on that dusty Montana plain so many years ago. As the sun began to set over Lincoln, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Samuel pulled Emma closer. I love you, Dr. Morrison, he whispered, using the title she had kept professionally even after taking his name. Emma smiled up at him, her eyes reflecting the same devotion they had shown for nearly a decade. And I love you, my stubborn cowboy, always. Together, they watched their children, the living proof that hope, determination, and love, could overcome even the most definitive of diagnoses as they played in the fading light of day, secure in the knowledge that their family's story, like the crib that had once seemed an impossible dream, had been built by hands that refused to accept limitation. And in that moment, Samuel knew with absolute certainty that his greatest achievement wasn't in walking again, or in building a successful business, or even in fathering 4 beautiful children. It was in having the courage to believe in possibilities when all seemed lost, a lesson he would pass to his children, along with the story of a doctor who saved a cowboy's life, and then, against all odds, helped him create new lives that the world had said could never exist.